It all starts so simply, usually with a webcam in a bedroom, a connection that feels raw, real, totally revolutionary. But somehow it ends with private jets, tearful public apologies, and in some cases, even prison sentences. This is the story of the influencer scandal playbook, and how a whole industry that was built on being relatable is now facing a massive public reckoning.
And just think back to how it all began, right? The promise of influencer culture was so simple, but it was incredibly powerful. These weren't some untouchable celebrities walking a red carpet. No, they felt like your friends, like someone whose advice you'd actually take, someone you were watching build their dream right in front of you. That feeling, that genuine sense of connection, that was the entire foundation.
So yeah, how did we get here? From a friend giving you makeup tips to massive headlines about fraud, betrayal, and huge brands just running for the hills. How did that real, genuine connection get so completely lost in translation? And what happens when that trust is broken? Not just with a few people, but on a global scale. Let's get into it and break down exactly how it all went so wrong.
Well, for starters, it gets lost to the tune of $26 million. That's the staggering amount Billy McFarland, the guy behind the infamous Fyre Festival, was ordered to forfeit for wire fraud. A single number that pretty much sums up the absolute peak of influencer-driven hype and the spectacular, fiery crash that came right after. Okay, so to really get how a total disaster like Fyre Festival was even possible in the first place, we have to go deeper. We need to understand the core psychology that influencers were tapping into, right from the very beginning. It's an incredibly powerful dynamic, and it's what experts call the celebrityfication trap.
What's so wild is that this isn't some newfangled internet thing. Sociologists named Horton and Wool actually came up with this term, parasocial interaction, way back in 1956. They were talking about how people felt connected to TV and radio hosts. It's that feeling that you know someone, even though you've never, ever met them.
But as you can imagine, social media took this whole idea and just put it on steroids. Unlike old-school TV, platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch are built for interaction. The likes, the comments, the DMs, they all work together to create this illusion of a real two-way relationship. And that constant stream of content, it makes you feel like you're right there with them, a part of their daily life. It's basically intimacy by design.
And that right there, that's the absolute core of the entire influencer economy. That feeling of friendship, that deep sense of trust, it's not just some happy accident. It is the product. It's what brands are paying millions for. And it's the very thing that gets exploited when it all goes sideways. Which brings us to the main event, our big case study. This was the moment the curtain was violently pulled back on the whole industry, revealing this huge gaping chasm between the curated promise and the chaotic reality. Yeah, let's talk about the Fyre Festival.
The timeline is it's almost unbelievable when you lay it out. In late 2016, a single orange tile, posted by hundreds of the world's biggest influencers, kicks off this viral campaign for a festival nobody's ever heard of. Then, less than 5 months later, that dream implodes into a literal humanitarian disaster, live tweeted for the entire world to watch in real time, all ending with a 6-year prison sentence.
And the contrast is just staggering. On one side, you have the promise, which was sold to you through these gorgeous, slick videos and celebrity endorsements. And on the other side, you have the grim reality, as described in actual lawsuits. We're talking wet tents, packaged cheese sandwiches, and a complete lack of basic sanitation. And the key thing to get here is that this wasn't just a party that was poorly planned. It was a fundamental deception, sold entirely on the back of the trust people had in these influencers.
But here's the thing. Fyre Festival wasn't some one-off crazy event. It was just the loudest, most spectacular symptom of a much, much wider problem. In fact, according to a 2024 report from Fama.io, a shocking 47% of influencers that were screened had been flagged for some kind of online misconduct. Just let that sink in for a second. Nearly half.
And you see this pattern everywhere, in every corner of the internet. It's undeniable. You have major beauty gurus like Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star losing huge brand deals over resurfaced racist content. You've got a top-tier gaming streamer like Dr. Disrespect getting banned from Twitch and losing sponsorships over horrific allegations. It's this recurring cycle. Bad behavior, public discovery, and then the inevitable fallout.
And the data really shows us what this misconduct looks like. Trolling and harassment, that's the biggest slice of the pie.
It's followed pretty closely by inappropriate sexual content and then intolerance or bigotry. So this isn't just about a few bad business deals. We're talking about behavior that alienates audiences and can cause real, actual harm.
So when that trust gets broken so publicly, the consequences are swift and they are severe, not just for the influencer, but for every single brand that's tied to them. This is the part of the playbook where the real price gets paid.
And here's a perfect example of that corporate damage control in action. So, after a scandal involving some old tweets, the Dutch retail giant Hema didn't just quietly end their deal with influencer Anna Nushin. Oh no, they issued a very public statement. They said they listened to the feedback and explicitly decided to end our partnership. It's a crystal clear signal to their customers, we share your values, not theirs. And in crisis communication, there's actually a name for this. It's called a social failure. See, it's not just a product that doesn't work or a bad ad. A social failure is when a brand, by being associated with an influencer, violates the core values of its own community. It's like breaking a social contract with your customer, and that can be incredibly damaging to a company's reputation.
Now, with so much money flying around and so much potential for deception, it was really only a matter of time before the regulators stepped in. The Wild West days of influencer marketing are pretty much over, and now governments are scrambling to write the rulebook.
Here in the U.S., the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, has been cracking down hard. The main rules are actually pretty simple when you boil them down. First, if there's what they call a material connection, meaning you got paid, you got a free product, basically anything of value, you have to disclose it. Second, that disclosure has to be clear and obvious. You can't just bury it in a mountain of hashtags. And third, you can't lie. And here's the kicker. Both the influencer and the brand can be held liable for any false claims. Suddenly, that simple Instagram post becomes a pretty big legal risk.
So, after all the scandals, the brands running for cover, the new regulations, what have we actually learned? Well, the entire landscape of what it means to have influence has been fundamentally changed.
You know, this comparison really says it all, doesn't it? The entire industry started with this idea of relatability, with the feeling of authentic connection, like you were talking to a peer. Today, it is dominated by aspiration. It's a celebrity lifestyle that feels just as distant as old Hollywood ever did. The webcam has been swapped out for the private jet, and that friend giving advice has now become a full-blown corporate entity. The very thing that made influencers feel special has been traded away for scale and, of course, for profit.
Which leaves us with the one big question. Is this all just the natural evolution of things? Has the influencer simply become the new celebrity, doomed to repeat the exact same cycles of fame and scandal? Or is there still a path back to that original promise of authenticity and genuine connection? What do you think? I'd love to know.